I love moments in competitions like this. Or this. Or even this. That sudden shift in energy, going from doubting your ability or your team's chances of winning to all at once feeling like anything is possible. Whether it was a clutch comeback in a match online or stealing a grab out of nowhere into a combo you've been practicing, it's euphoric to all at once go from a state of doubt and worry to a state of triumph and confidence. The Uno reverse card, the magic cylinder, the reversal, the no you. And I don't think any one mechanic in video games more perfectly encapsulates this sensation than the parry. Parrying, countering, whatever you'd like to call it, it's all the raw emotion and thrill of a comeback concentrated into one blissful instant of fury. Several games have it. It feels like electricity flowing through your veins every time you pull one off, and you're going to be seeing a lot of them throughout this video, so keep a spare pair of underbreeches nearby. Today, I'd like to take a look at the psychology behind what makes them so special. What makes a good parry? How is it so satisfying? What does the psychology of gambling have to do with it? And could pulling off a counter actually boost your subsequent performance when gaming? If you've been here for a while, you'll know that we always discuss psychology and gaming, but today, honestly, I'd also just like to send a love letter to the parry, to interceptions, to clutch counters, and monumental momentum shifts. So if I stop to gush, just indulge me. And then crucify me in the comments because I didn't talk about Sekiro enough. Let's dive into the psychology of the counter and talk about what makes that perfectly timed input feel so damn good. It's a Wednesday morning. You're laying in bed because although you have to get up and pee and get ready for work, you don't have to pee and get ready for work that bad just yet. So you pop open your gacha games, you get your daily in-game currency, do a free summon, and oh damn, 5 stars, that's a specimen right there. He's almost as ripped as me. This is a good moment for you. Given the odds of success, you've won a small jackpot. However, it's worth noting that every Wednesday for the past month, and in fact every day for the past month, you have not pulled a 5-star unit, and yet here you are, playing the odds as you procrastinate starting your day. The reason for your behavior here is due, at least in part, to something called a variable reinforcement schedule. According to research by psychologists Charles Furster and B.F. Skinner, when we are rewarded for an action on a schedule, we are more or less likely to continue to do said action depending on that schedule. When we are rewarded for every time we do something, for example, what we would call a continuous reinforcement schedule, it builds an association for that action. You know, if we step on the pedal, the car goes forward. But should we stop being rewarded for it, we will almost immediately stop trying it. Which is why if an ATM or a vending machine is broken, you aren't going to be itching to come back daily and see if it works. It's supposed to work. However, when we are rewarded sometimes for an action, rewarded on a variable schedule, let's say, like only every few weeks, we're going to keep coming back quite a bit. Gacha games, slot machines, loot boxes, etc., all use variable reinforcement schedules to keep you coming back. You aren't going to win every single time you roll the dice, and this is exactly what makes the few times you do get reinforcement feel so good, and it's what makes parrying to the average player such a magnificent moment. Yes, I did use gacha games as a segue into parries. Every parry is a tiny lottery win, a juicy little jackpot, which is exactly why the hardest ones to pull off tend to feel the best. The harder a counter is, i.e. the lower amount of active frames the animation has in partnership with the skill it takes to know when to use said parry, keeps the amount of successful attempts to a minimum. Again, to the average player, I know these people exist, and if you're one of them, you're my hero. Thank you for watching. Pair that with the fact that most counters leave you exposed if you botch the timing, and it makes for a true gamble every time you go for one. For example, most of the parries in Dark Souls have about 6 active frames, or about 1/10 of a second at 60 frames per second, where the parry will work, followed by around 16 recovery frames in the animation, where your buttons are about as useful as an old pair of windshield wipers during a tsunami. Meaning if you attempt this and fail to time it right, it could mean death. But if you nail it, it means you can both stop their attack and follow up with some major damage. damage. And this is pretty common of most of the counters you'll see, too early or too late with the timing, but it's that inherent risk that creates the thrill and creates the variable reinforcement schedule. If your parry worked almost every time, it would just be an expectation that it'll work instead of an earned surprise when it finally does connect. This is kind of how I felt about Skyward Sword's shield bash. It seemed just a little too forgiving. Compared to Breath of the Wild's perfect guard, which does seem to have a really tight window and can get you killed, the Skyward Sword shield bash feels like something you'd spam rather than gamble with. Now, you should know, I could not find frame data on this. This is just the feeling I got from playing both games. This old Reddit post agreed, you guys mostly agreed, and I think that really is due to the fact that successful counters here aren't hard to come by and aren't that punishing if you mess up. The typical damage you take in Skyward Sword isn't remarkably brutal. Don't get me wrong, I love Skyward Sword. It has some of the best dungeons in the series to me, but the parry specifically, for me, could be better. A great example of a parry that truly is like gambling is the Yomi counter from Fantasy Strike. Yes, there is a window for this move to be executed, but you simply need to do nothing to make it happen. You just leave that window open when you see it. Essentially, if your opponent goes for a grab and you are just standing there, inputting nothing, it'll trigger and counter for a good bit of damage. No combo, no hitting a button with perfect timing, simply make an educated guess or bait block your opponent into grabbing and then let them walk into it. If you guess wrong, well, they hit you for free and you only have yourself to blame. It's incredibly punishing if you mess up, but a delight if you nail it. The same can be said of the parry and fury, which will restore a little health if you land it, the counter in Ghost of Tsushima that leaves your opponent wide open, and the roughly 6 to 10 frame Street Fighter 3 parry, which negates all damage and was the only way Daigo could survive on this day. Parries are beautiful. And although I made the point that it's the risk and the scarcity with which most people land them that makes them special, there are things devs can do to keep players trying without making them easy. One strategy slot machines often employ to keep people coming back is something called a near miss. Have you ever seen the Yes, fire! Yeah, that's a near miss, but it keeps gamblers coming back because it tricks the mind into thinking you're getting closer to a payout, even if payouts are still totally random and the only thing you're getting closer to is bankruptcy. And this exact thing occurs in games too, but not to get your money, well yes, to get your money, but also to tell you that you're actually getting close. In Dark Souls, if you go to parry just a few frames too early, you aren't immediately punished. You might get a partial parry, which doesn't actually counter the attack, but for your troubles, it will reduce the damage you take and keep you from going into block stun, which is better than being hit altogether. It lets you know you're close to nailing that sweet counterattack, but dares you to try again. You've probably noticed that Breath of the Wild does something similar if you've ever tried to perfect guard a Guardian's Blast. Guilty Gear Strive, which is my favorite game of the year so far, has something called Instant Block, where if you hold back and begin your block within the first 2 frames of your opponent's attack, it prevents damage, reduces pushback to 0, and increases your tension meter. If you're too late, you get hit, but if you're too early, you're still blocking, so no harm done. Try again. All that to say, counters can be hard to pull off, but don't always need to be extremely high risk in order to keep that variable reinforcement schedule. Much like crits in RPGs, successful parries are a wonderful surprise because unless you have a ton of practice, they don't happen often. Alright, we've talked about substance enough. Let's talk style. When you perform a melee counter in Metroid Samus Returns, it stops the foe's attack in its tracks, and it opens them up for some free offense. The same can be said of most counters. I'm in danger. Oh, sorry, did you drop this? Take it back, you motherfucker. But in Samus Returns, should you do this during certain bosses, it will begin a special animation that is 1, diesel as hell, and 2, an opportunity to really wail on these 3DS pixelated schmucks. And I think this is the other ingredient that makes these mechanics live rent-free in my head. That ooey gooey hot melty goodness that we call feedback. Slow motion in Tsushima, that thundery buttery voice saying in Guilty Gear, that crunchy metallic clash sound in DMC3, that crunchy metallic clash sound in Sekiro, that crunchy metallic clash sound in NieR. Lots of metal in these games. I'm preaching to the choir, you already know that the feedback is heavenly. But I really appreciate when devs go the extra mile and give you something more, like Metroid has the cutscenes and Jedi Fallen Order does the same if you nail 3 back-to-back counters against this dude. Delicious. If you deflect bosses in Sekiro and their posture meter maxes out, it'll open them up for a gruesomely gorgeous death blow. And in Monster Hunter World, if you land a counter claw move, you'll go flying, then be ziplined directly to the monster's head where you can start swinging away on them up close. The elite parries in games capitalize on the style from the audiovisual feedback and the substance of rewarding the player for pulling off something low percentage and clutch with an opportunity to deal major damage. And in a nutshell, this is exactly what makes a great parry and why it so perfectly encapsulates those moments we talked about at the beginning. Something incredible happens that changes the flow of the game in an instant. And if you'll indulge me one last time, I'd like to close this out by talking about something that surprised me when I was researching this video. As it turns out, there is an established research-backed phenomena that occurs within each of us during moments like these. I'd like to talk about psychological momentum. It's commonplace in basketball for a team or a player to get hot. Maybe one big three-pointer is scored, and then suddenly the script of the game begins to change. This is how comebacks happen. When teams in football aren't playing well, you might hear the commentators say something along the lines of, they need a spark.
Tampa Bay, they needed a play. Just takes that first one to go, folks.
And I know if you've ever been dominating in a game online, then suddenly made a mistake, the thought, oh no, what if I blow this, might have creeped into your mind. And sure enough, now the other player or other team catches fire and goes on a tear even though just a moment ago everything was going your way. These are all examples of momentum shifts, strange little unseen but very much felt nudges by the hands of fate. Things that are talked about quite a bit.
Those are frustrating plays, especially up 10-0 there. Obviously changed the momentum of the game, and obviously weren't very efficient after that.
But in the real world, shouldn't matter. One good play, after all, doesn't equate to several good plays, and yet a single base hit can be the difference between an RBI to put your team back in it, or a blowout. A well-timed spot dodge can be the ignition to get this thing moving and get that blown stock back. A big response can give a player or a team an advantage for that particular moment, but the reason you so often see players go on a tear immediately following these moments is due to psychological momentum, which is the player's perception and reaction to said big play. This is when you do something big and start feeling it, getting a spark, finding some momentum, taking a timeout to let things settle down when the other team has you on your heels, are all things that have been talked about and believed by many for years now, but to find empirical research that supports this was mind-boggling for me. According to an NCBI meta-analysis, it essentially works like this. The initial success, the interception, the counter, the big moment, first makes you the player feel confident and competent. Okay, I'm doing something right. And because of this initial success, the player is then able to rely more on their automatic subconscious processes. In essence, doing well gets lots of people out of their head. And the more successes snowball after this point, the stronger the psychological momentum, or PM, grows. Of course, this does work in reverse. If you lose your rhythm, if something goes horribly wrong and you have that thought, oh no, what if I blow this, then the momentum goes against you and you may stray away from your muscle memory and your unconscious processing that helps you play more naturally. It's the reason timeouts in basketball to stop a hot streak do work in a lot of cases, and why taking a timeout to get in the kicker's head right before a game-winning field goal often works as well. Sports psychologists do a lot of work with their clients to keep PM from working against them and instead help them take advantage of it. A big play can be pivotal, and when the energy of a game takes a 180, it can lead to continued sustained momentum and lead to wins. Which brings me to the third and final reason that parries are so satisfying. They're pretty, they're rewarding, and they can spark psychological momentum. A well-timed counter gives you confidence. It can give you lightning in a bottle. It gives you a little string of fate tied to victory in a fight that you may not have thought you could win until now. There may have been games and will be games in the future where one counter was all you needed to get out of your head, string together some offense, and earn yourself a win. And look, I realize I'm being dramatic here, and this may be a stretch, but I'm a video essayist. This needs to sound absolutely bonkers to me because it is. PM is enough of a reason for teams to spend top dollar on sports psychologists. Enough of a reason for hot-seated coaches whose every decision is critically analyzed by fans and billionaire owners to put their jobs on the line and spend a precious timeout to stop the other team's hot streak. I don't think it's a stretch to say that if you land a parry, a reversal, a simple little down B, then you may absolutely trigger some PM and find yourself playing better in this match than you were before. Not just in the instant of the parry, mind you, but in the moments following as well. Which may be why it hurts so bad and in fact may hurt your performance once you've been countered. Momentum swings both ways, but unfortunately you can't call a timeout in Smash when you're struggling.
There's a dispute. Hold up.
I guess my point is, parries are cool as hell, and to me at least they are the perfect illustration, the ideal packaging of a sensation that has always given me goosebumps watching and playing sports growing up. Comebacks are what make competitions special. They're the stories we can't stop telling, and the fist-pumping moments we as natural competitors show up for. And the fact that there is a game mechanic that is designed to ignite that shift in momentum, as well as psychological research that supports the validity and utility of something that I've been feeling for so long now, makes me grin ear to ear. A lot of times it seems all we need is a little push, a little something to go our way, a little turning of the tides, a little luck, a little jackpot. Thanks as always for joining me here today and letting me gush over parries. This was a fun video to write, except for how many times I had to use the word parry. I want to take a moment to sincerely thank my friends over on Twitter and those who participate in the YouTube community posts. You guys made digging up examples for this video an absolute delight, and I love discovering the games and mechanics you are passionate about. If you don't want to miss out on future interactions like this, be sure to follow me on Twitter and watch out for the YouTube community posts. I'd also like to thank my wonderful Patreon backers, especially this month's featured patrons: Alan Strymon, Dom Louie, Macer V, or maybe Macer the Fifth, Sammy Worlda, Lucas Still, King, Cube Master, and Lunatic Prophet. Thanks again for watching. I hope your day is going exactly how you want it to, and if it's not, just keep your head up and keep on going. I'm sure your spark isn't too far away. Like the video, share the video, subscribe if you like, and let me know what parries I didn't mention in the comments. Take care, guys, and have yourself a damn good one.